Welcome back to our first Lead the Standard recording for 2025. If you've ever felt like you're running on a bit of a hamster wheel, stuck in a loop, and where progress feels a little bit elusive, then this episode is for you. Episode 1, 2025, we are talking about breaking free from the ISO career hamster wheel, a framework for real change. And we're looking into personal responsibilities, those external influences, and how to break free from cycles that hold us back. So, we're going to be exploring a little bit of those themes from our recent newsletters, including responsibility and influence dynamics, which is a framework making meaningful change and reflecting on starting 2025 with purpose and clarity. So, we'll touch on these ideas and how to connect real world challenges and opportunities. It may be a new year, but I am still Kelly Taylor. And as always, I am joined for today's inspiring discussion with Jackie Stapleton, my co host and director of Atoll, who, as always, brings really great perspectives to our conversation. So, Happy New Year, Jackie.
Thank you. Yes, we're both still here. Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. Just practicing rewriting that date in the diary, making sure we
Yeah.
get that. Jackie, before we do jump into the nitty gritty of the story that got you here, I'm curious about what inspired this week's topic, breaking free from the ISO career hamster wheel and a framework for real change.
Well, probably leads on from what we just said. Yep, we're still here. Nothing's changed. Because that's how I felt on the 1st of January. I thought, okay. And normally I feel quite positive and, write goals down. Yeah. But
Vision boards.
yeah, it's just like, I'm just really not feeling it this year. So, I sort of said same stuff, different year. And then I had this picture of a hamster wheel, of just going around and around. And I did actually put up a social post with a little image or little video of a hamster wheel and the poor animal getting flung out. I thought that's sort of how I'm feeling, and more so flinging out is either like get yourself off that hamster wheel, and to be honest, I on the 1st of January or even leading up to it a little bit and a few days after, you see all of these posts about setting goals, do this, do that. And look, thank you everyone for sharing it. And I get it. But it was just like same stuff, different year. It's like, yeah, I know all of that stuff. I know it all. It's like, I don't know, when you're trying to lose weight, I know that I shouldn't eat more calories than I'm burning. We all know what good food is, but we still go and eat rubbish. So I thought, you know what, I'm not going to sprout off and act as if I'm feeling great about this, because I suppose I wanted to share that it's okay not to feel great about it, and then what my thoughts were. And my first thoughts actually weren't, write my goals, blah, blah, blah. It was more, well, Jackie, you're feeling like this. You've only got yourself, you can only make the choices to get yourself out of this funk. Like it's your choice. It's your responsibility. So, I was thinking that to myself, no one else can get me out of it. It's really, centrally, it is me that has to get myself out of it. All right. So I really wanted to share that with everyone and then extend on that personal responsibility. So that's my back sob story.
Well, it is so true. I think this year, so many people can relate to that. While yes, there's been all of those motivational, get up, here's my resolutions, these are the amazing things I did. But there's actually a lot of satire around that this year as well, going, I just can't be bothered. So here's my
Hmm.
stuff and my junk. So I think I shared this on the LinkedIn post for the newsletter. I think this conversation is really important to have because so many people this year are feeling stuck and feeling in a bit of a funk. So um yeah, I think it's a really important discussion for us to be having.
Awesome. I'm glad. I'm glad I didn't let the team down
Never let them seem
by
down.
not being motivational. But really, the model I came up with, it
Mm,
sort of it also helps you to think. So, as I said, like when I reflected back on it was my attitude about being stuck on a hamster wheel and that same stuff different year. As I said, the only person to blame was myself. Don't know if blame's the right word, but I'm
yeah.
responsible. The decision to change is solely on me. So, it was to do with how I felt and my circumstances. So that's when I thought, yeah, I'm the only person responsible here. And then there are other things that are influencing me.
Yeah.
Okay, but it still lies with me. Okay, so I recognize that there's these other influences, and as you know how my brain works, I go back to the standards, the ISO standards, um, and I realize that like my responsibility and decision making is also influenced by external and internal factors. So that whole external and internal factors that we talk about in clause 4.1 and 4.2 in the ISO standards, we have those influencing factors on our attitude and how we feel. So to help us to get rid, RID, of these thoughts,
Oh, clever.
I know, right?
Didn't
So
even connect. Well done.
yes. So
I'm
to
proud.
get rid of these thoughts and feelings about our move forward in a new year, and I'll actually talk about that as well, I came up with the responsibility and influence dynamics model. That in itself is a mouthful, but it's good because it says the RID model, because it helps you to get rid of these thoughts. It sort of helps you to start thinking externally. I want to circle back because after I actually wrote this newsletter, what was I? Oh, or maybe it was while I was writing this newsletter. I read a um an article as to why do we set these set ourselves up, these New Year's resolutions, or I'll start the diet on Monday, or the first of the month, or after Christmas, or there's always these points in time that, we put off. I'm pretty sure my mum would say, why don't you just start now? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's like, but everyone says, no, I'll start on Monday. I'll start my new diet on Monday. Well, I do. That's me. It's a Monday to start anything, whatever it is. And of course, your New Year's resolutions. And I read this article that said, well, it is actually a psychological thing because our brain can see a new starting point. It can see the past Jackie and then where the future Jackie can head. So we do need these points in time to help us to break old habits, start new habits, start, a new hobby or join a new club. We do look for those points. And I get it. We can start at any time, but those points in time help us psychologically to leave that past behind and then move forward. So I thought that was really interesting. So it's okay. Like if you're a person that can start at any time, go for it. Well, I suppose it could be a new day. and it depends on what it is. But
All about mindset. Yeah.
yeah. And this is a big thing. I know, I know about you, but if I'm, say it's after Christmas, so now I'm trying to eat right. I've eaten all the rubbish in the house, and now I'm going to try and eat right. But say if I just have one thing wrong at 10 o'clock, I think, well, stuff it. I'm just going to eat crap all day. Because I think, oh, well, but a lot of people I see on Instagram go, it's always the next meal that you can make the best choice. And my mindset is, I'm just going to write today off and go for it. And I'll start again tomorrow.
Don't restrict yourself in the first place.
It's broken now. I might as well keep going. Don't take my advice.
Will do. Eat what you enjoy. It's my philosophy.
So do you do that? Do you have start, stop?
Yes. I have I'm going to start tomorrow. I'm going to start Monday. And as my other half will attest, when I say, I'll do that tomorrow, it's not getting done. So if I tell myself that I have a new start point, but if I don't do that now or don't lock that into a calendar, diary, appointment situation, then for me, out of sight, out of mind. And I have a better understanding of that now, which is very handy. But yeah, it is definitely something that I think 90% of people can relate to. And I question the other 10% as to whether they genuinely say, no, I am waiting and resetting at that next meal. Are you? Are you?
Well, they're very disciplined, and I take my hat off to them. Well done.
Absolutely.
You can tell I'm not in that industry, but I do watch a lot of Instagram. About a lot of reels about it to get inspired. But I think those points are quite pivotal for us. And you know what? Possibly in particular the new year, because it is all about New Year's resolutions, we do feel that pressure.
That's it.
Yeah. And this year I really didn't have the energy to succumb to it, I have to say. So I embraced it.
And I think, as I said earlier, a lot of people are struggling this year because if you think back on the last 3 years, the new year has brought more, bigger, ickier, that's out of a lot of our control. So I think the path that you have chosen there to embrace it and control what you can control is the safest path. There is no point in all of us having the hopes and dreams and wishing for world peace, though that would be wonderful. It's out of our control. So that the last few years have very much felt like that. Each reset, things haven't gone as planned. So I think this year a lot of people have gone.
That's a good point. And also I was thinking that there's also a lot of change going on, like technology wise. And this is my personal thing. It's almost like, I'm exhausted trying to keep up,
Yes.
or I'm scared that we're going to get left behind. It's this fear, and I'm thinking, okay, another year. I've got to keep this energy up. I've got to keep learning new things like AI, digitization, all of that sort of thing. I think I mentioned it to you before, Kelly. I was listening to a podcast. It's probably a couple of months ago now, with from a futurist, and he said something like, this period in time is the fastest changing time we have ever experienced in our lives. And at the same time, it is the slowest, because tomorrow it's going to be faster the next day. We're sort of in this hamster wheel, or maybe it's a tornado. It's like there's so many things I need to be aware of, and I suppose maybe as an older person, I think there's some fear there as to how am I going to keep up with this? I'm tired, Kelly.
Well, again, that's what I said in my comment. Like, Christmas, we had all these plans to just relax and go and enjoy things like go and have a picnic on the beach. Too tired to relax because of all of that energy of trying to keep up with all of this change and that anxiety around that
Mm.
change, technologically, the global change. But I think, and I know we haven't quite got into the model yet, and I did share it briefly on screen, but I'll share it again as we talk through it. Some of those external influences, the uncertainty around change for that is also creating a bit of apprehension for everybody. I can do this now, but what's the point in doing and changing this now if next week it's going to be redundant or it's going to change again? And I don't think, I can't think of any time in the last 20 years of my 20 plus years of my working career where I've ever had that
Mm.
mindset or that concern.
Mm.
And I'm seeing that with a lot of people here, personal, professional, the works,
Yeah.
globally. So
Yeah.
anybody who turns on a computer, television, news, opens up a read.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's really important. We jump straight into this because I know a lot of those things are going to be popping up along
Okay.
the way. But I
Okay.
think it's really important we reassure people that this, yes, we're talking about the ISO career hamster wheel, but I think this is really relevant to everyone.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad you think so. So let's break down the RID model. So the first section of the RID model is personal responsibility. So this is the core element in the model. You can see that right in the middle there. So, because it all comes down to us taking ownership of how and what our outcomes are to be. We can't whinge and moan about the outcomes. It's up to us to change that. So personal responsibility is, I suppose, the acknowledgement that we have the power to influence our lives through our choices and actions. It is the foundation on which this change is built. So by taking ownership of our decisions, taking control, someone told me just this week, take control, Jackie. So by taking control, you can shape what our outcomes and what our experiences are. So with this RID model, it really shows that central focus of personal responsibility is that first step towards making those meaningful changes and changing those outcomes. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think we've already talked about how the internal, external influences and all of those sorts of things happen. But it is important to acknowledge, and look, this has been my life the last 4 or 5 years of these things. Everything is external, but I could fall down in a heap and cry and rock and do nothing and all of those things if I want to, but I chose not to. And I think that's why I'm so worked up about this particular topic, because there is a lot that we can't control, but we can control how we feel, act,
Mm-hmm.
all of those sorts of things. So we can be aware of those other elements, but it's our decision whether we let them control us or whether
Yeah.
we decide, okay, I can't control that, so I'm going to let that go and focus on what I can. Well, that is yuck, but that's yuck for a reason, and I'm not going to let that affect me negatively. I'm going to tackle it this way. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think acknowledging that that other stuff happens, but how we manage, approach, handle, process all of that comes back to
That's a good
us.
word, process. And because it sort of leads into what I was thinking is like, I don't want people listening to think, oh, this is easy. Just take responsibility, because then I
No,
sound like my mother. It's not. Honestly, yes, like, in theory, that's great. I am not saying it's easy.
no, it's
Okay.
not.
It's not. And I like Kelly used that word process, and I've got a very recent example. There was something that happened yesterday that
Mm,
that triggered me, and I felt I didn't have any control. I took took the afternoon off work, I slept on it, and I need, and this is how you understand yourself, I need time to process. And sometimes if it's too overwhelming, I do have to check out. I do need to have some space
Yep.
to process it. And this is only something, this is a recent discovery. And sorry, I might be skipping to internal influence, which I think is the last one, because that internal influence is about understanding yourself and your values and how you work. And it's only something I've realized probably in the last 12, 18 months is that I can make some decisions, if I'm conducting an audit or building a system or, making decisions with you, Kelly, on with Atoll and etc. But sometimes if you just sit on it, I'm going to say it's really not as
Really not
bad.
that complex. Yeah, it's not as complex. It's not as scary. There is a way out. Yeah, sit on it. I've
Yeah.
got so many examples when we get to that internal, just on my last 18
Okay,
months of
I'll
lived
shut up then.
experience. But yeah, but I think regardless of how in depth we're going to get to, it is important to acknowledge that people, yes, it's a personal responsibility, but I'm going to quote the wonderful Rachael Dunn from Girl Director. You have the permission to make those decisions. You don't need someone
Give
else's
yourself
permission.
permission.
Give yourself permission to process and
Yeah.
manage these the way they are. So I'm getting
Yeah.
emotional. That statement really was an eye-opener for me. She
Yeah.
said that to me many years ago, and I often hear her in the back of my head saying, you don't need someone else's permission. I'll give you permission to give yourself permission.
Yeah. We should put a link to Rachael and Girl
We will.
Director in the
Yeah.
notes. Because she's has been an amazing, if we're going to move into influences, which will be next, external influence, she's been an amazing external influence for me. And I think it was before 2019, December 2019, right before COVID. So I've had her in my life for 5 years. Yeah. So amazing. Great example. And I've just come back from the doctors, and my doctor said to me, this is funny. At your age, Jackie, you need to manage your self-care.
I don't like the fact that that was prefaced with "at your age." I feel
Well,
like
we're both the same age, so we've grown old together. She's been my doctor for 25,
I think
30 years.
everybody needs to manage their self-care, regardless of how
But when you're younger, you bounce back more.
that.
And
Well, okay, that's a
yeah,
realization.
so she was using it in that context, and she said when you're older, it's even more important that you give yourself permission to give yourself self-care, because as a young person you can go and it's like but as we get older it takes us longer.
That's why I don't drink anymore.
She said you're not as resilient, we were talking about stress and all of that,
Right.
so she said you're not as resilient, so give yourself some space and, as you said, permission to look after yourself. You're at the stage where you should be looking after yourself, self-care. So I loved that term that she used.
Yeah.
Okay, I will now go on to talk about the influences. Okay, so
Yeah.
the second section of the RID model I've put as external influences. So as we've discussed, personal responsibility is absolutely crucial in this mix, but it's also really important to consider, be aware of the external factors that can impact our situation. Okay, so these are influences. So it could be our socioeconomic status. So our own economic conditions can stop us from doing things, or we feel it stops us from doing things, or it could actually open up opportunities. So that affects our decision making. Absolutely. Cultural norms, so societies like the expectations and values, what you think people are expecting of you, and that shapes your own beliefs and what you think is possible or acceptable. Then, like the physical environment, so environmental factors, so that includes what resources can you access? So, what resource do you have access to? It could be financial resources, it could be tools, processes, people, which sort of comes into the next one, which is relationships. So, and we talked about Rachael Dunn from Girl Director, I'll name her as a positive external influence. So those dynamics of those personal. So I'll put my husband in this as well. He's an amazing support for me, always has been. If I didn't have that support, my decisions would be different. And then, of course, you've got your professional relationships, which can actually be empowering, but they can actually really impact you negatively as well. So understanding what these external influences are that's going on in your head, it helps us to, I suppose, make decisions, navigate around, how am I going to change my outcome? And how do these external influences, positive or negative, help me or don't help me to change my path? Does that make sense, Kelly?
Absolutely. And I'm going to piggyback off that last comment because, again, when I shared the newsletter on LinkedIn, I shared our experience over Christmas. I've already said we had all these wonderful plans to go on picnics and road trips and relax and do all of these wonderful calming
The
things.
dream.
Yeah, and too tired to do any of it. But on top of that, my other half and I, we had very different experiences over the break. We were both exhausted, but there was kind of a point in time, and I've already had this discussion with Jackie, and wise words were said. But we work from home, and I was very excited about all of these ideas and things that we'd come up with at the end of last year, and I'm going to do that the first week back. So I found myself frequently running into my office, writing something down in my notebook, and then closing the door and walking away again. So while I was exhausted from all of the work and all of those things that we'd done, I actually didn't switch off, which was something that you should be doing on holidays. I wasn't necessarily on my computer working, completing things, but I was still having ideas, still running in, still writing things, looking at, oh, have we done? Didn't switch off. He, on the other hand, the second last day of the year in the office, had those wonderful announcements of, look, we're going to be looking at some restructuring and there's going to be a little bit of change. And so he spent the whole 2 weeks going, what am I coming back to? Do I want to go back? Am I scared to go back? So he spent 2 weeks with anxiety. And I know many other people were in that same boat. Why do they do that the week before Christmas?
Yeah, that's
It's awful, awful thing.
timing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So two very different experiences there. The external influences had an impact on our lead into the new year. And I set myself all of these really high expectations of all of these things I'm going to do. We're a week in, and I think I've done 3 or 4 of the things that I wanted to do for this time period. He is coming home of an afternoon going, oh, this changed, but then this changed. So he's got that anxiety. He can't control what those changes are, but he is, to his credit, starting to go, well, actually, I can't control that, and this is what I am or I'm not going to do. It's just going to be water off a duck's back, and I'm going to ride it through and do those sorts of things. So those external influences can, as you said, be positive or negative. You and I catch up regularly just to bounce ideas, or there's this problem, or we do that on a personal and a professional level. But again, on those socioeconomic, cultural norms, environmental factors as well, like there's so many different things there that are going to stop people, as you said, those financial matters. Some people can and can't access things due to financial constraints. Some people can't access things due to their location, their ethnicity, their gender,
Yep.
all of those
Yep.
sorts of things. There are so many external influences that we don't necessarily think of, or we automatically put up that roadblock and go, I can't do
Mm-hmm.
this because of this, and this.
Mm.
And as we lead into those internal influences, yeah, I said, Rachel and I don't have that same relationship that you and Rachel do, but that conversation I had with her 3 years ago now has really stuck with me and made a big difference to how I perceive things. So, yeah, just because something bad is happening outside there doesn't mean that it needs to negatively impact you. But at the same time, just because something good is happening to somebody else external and it's not happening to you, doesn't mean that that's a bad thing either.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you make a good point because some of these things we just can't control.
No.
So yeah, we need to. You've actually made me feel better.
Oh, there you go. But for this reason too, you mentioned there that you're watching a lot of reels and you're getting all of these wonderful motivational things. How
Mm.
how often? Now, full disclosure, I deleted a lot of social media early last year because I was going through all of my treatment and all those sorts of things, and I was finding the stuff that was being fed to me was not helpful. It was
Yep.
supposed to be, but it was not the right stuff for me at that point in time. How often, when you were reading those wonderful motivational messages, were you thinking, oh, I'm motivated, compared to, oh, I just don't have the energy to do that myself right now?
Probably in the state of mind I was in, I was going, oh, blah, blah, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever,
How,
which is really negative on my behalf and it's unusual behavior for
mm,
me.
mm.
But that's why I felt it was important to share.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But also, how often when we see somebody, magazines, all those sorts of things, eh, how beautiful are some of these influencers, and then or and actors and all of those things, and then you
Yes.
see them in the street and you go, "Oh,
Yeah, you don't recognize them.
yeah." So those external influences are not always going to be as
Mm,
they seem.
yeah,
And
true,
that's really important for us to acknowledge.
true.
Everyone has their beautiful social media life
Mm,
or their horrible social media life, whichever. There's an
yeah,
extreme. I
whatever
feel there's
they,
extremes. I
yeah,
feel there's very little in the middle. So those external influence are not always as they seem. They are curated by somebody, whether that's the person doing it, the journalist, the politician, whoever, whatever. But those external influences are not always as they seem.
absolutely. That's a really good point. And I suppose that's where it comes back to that personal responsibility and your own internal and external influences as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Fact
Yeah,
check.
yeah.
Fact check.
Okay,
Let's get
ready
in.
for the third final section?
Yeah.
It's really quite simple this week. So the third section of the RID model is our internal influences. So these internal influences, I guess, as a whole, are our own internal beliefs, motivations, those that like play a really significant role in shaping what our personal responsibility looks like. So these can be I'll say it again, self-efficacy. Hopefully they don't stop the recording there. Come back. So self-efficacy. So that's it's our own belief, or it's also our ability to succeed. Okay, a faith in our own ability to succeed. So that can significantly impact, I suppose, our willingness, our eagerness to take responsibility for our actions and our outcomes. It's also our mindset. So I love this term, a growth mindset or a learning mindset or a curious mindset, but they all feed into this growth mindset. So if we have this growth mindset, it helps us like to view any challenges we have as opportunities instead, and they're opportunities for us to learn and grow. So that demonstrates that you're taking responsibility for that challenge, but it's a learning process. I've just had a light bulb moment there, but I'll keep going. There's the values and beliefs as well. So we touched on this, core values, your personal beliefs that could have come from, when we were children, from our parents or teachers or, workmates 30 years ago. It's deeply embedded. So they guide our decision making, and they can either motivate us or stop us from taking this personal responsibility. Oh, it's all too hard. And then, of course, our emotional state, which I think possibly was a big influencer for my change in attitude. So that's the emotions that, you're currently going through. They influence sort of, I suppose, what your perception is of the circumstances. Like, how hard is it? Is it really that bad? And then our capacity to actually take action and do something about it.
I'm going to jump back to a comment that you made earlier about, I realized that I needed some time to process and step back and sleep on it. I'm disappointed, but understand why. Sleep was not added to that internal influence factor. I've got lots of examples, but just yesterday, Christine and I were working through a strategy, and we were both so tired at the end of the day. We'd looked at all of this 1,000 times, and we went, well, look, let's just say this for now, because it's tired, and this is all that I can process. And then we've both come back this morning and went, oh, because we were tired, that was so simple, and that makes so much more sense. But we were really struggling, and a lot of these things do, like if you are sleep deprived, you're in an emotional state, all of those things, internal, external, whatever, are going to be so much harder to process. So going back to the advice your doctor gave, have some time for some self-management, some self-care, and acknowledge it's okay for me to step away for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 4 hours, a day, a week, whatever you need to self-regulate, process, and get to a place where you can make logical or rational decisions that you are comfortable with.
Yeah. And look, you sleep definitely, but then you can put exercise, movement, diet, like that.
That means I have to acknowledge exercise. I wasn't.
Well, that's why I said movement. So movement is positive as well, particularly because, we have such sedentary jobs ourselves. So yeah, absolutely. All of that is an influence for sure.
Yeah. I want to share a personal story here of how and where all of this clicked for me. So we've shared the story before of 18 months ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It's a family history. And when I got that news, there was myself, my other half, he was sitting next to me. And we both heard exactly the same words from the doctor before she did all of the referrals and all those sorts of things. And my response to her was, okay, what's next? His response, he kind of had a bit of a shock face and slumped into the chair. He didn't know what was going to happen, all those sorts of things. Here is where that internal influence, personal responsibility, external comes into factor in that conversation. I not personally, had been through the cancer journey before with family members. I'd seen what that did. And look, to be honest with you, I've always had in the back of my mind, someday I'm going to get cancer, looking at this family history. I just don't know when, where, how. When it comes, I'll be ready and we'll face it and we'll get through it. He's not had that journey like many people, so he didn't know what to expect. When I went to my specialist and had this conversation, he said to me, it was about 3 or 4 weeks when I had my first major surgery, and he said to me while he was drawing all over me, said to me, "You're so calm and rational about this." And I said, "Well, I can't, there's nothing I can do. You're the professional. I'm putting my hands, like my health, my safety into your hands. All I can do is have trust and faith in you and the system and the process. And then whatever happens, I will deal with." It was that mindset of being prepared that someday this was going to happen. And when it does, it will just manage it how it is, that I think really helped me get through that journey without absolutely falling um, into pieces.
Mhm.
Yes, there's a huge, big group of support crew around me and all those sorts of things. But knowing that I had the decision to go, you know what, this isn't going to beat me and we're going to get through it and we're going to take each day as it comes, was really helpful in that journey.
Mm.
Then flip to the other drama that we had not long after that, which was the big storm here. And my hand, like we were absolutely at the whim of insurance companies, builders, external suppliers, all those sorts of things. And there was so much chaos and no one was communicating. And again, I went into this big stress ball and I couldn't, the complete opposite to like when someone says to you, "I had cancer," and that's not the worst thing that's happened to me, you look at them a little bit funny. Um, but again, it was that lack of control and all those external influences.
Mhm.
And it got to the point where I just had an absolute breakdown and went, "I can't control this. So I'm just going to do what I can do when I can do it. I'll come to the resolution that prepare for the what's the word? What's the expression? I've used it twice this morning already. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best."
Mhm.
And I think that's a mindset that we can all do. You can control what you can control, prepare yourself for the worst, but hope for the best. And most of the time, the worst is never going to happen, but at least you have some sort of, I don't know the word I'm looking for there. You have some sort of control about how that manage,
Yeah.
how that impacts and affects you.
Yeah. I
So,
can see the difference with those two with you though, because
mm,
you're a very organized person. Because I remember when I came up to your place the day after, you already had a folder with printouts of things and lists, and so this was after like you were diagnosed. So that was what you were able to control. So that's your sort of your internal system
control.
coming into
Yeah.
play. So, and of course it's doctors, there's appointments, there's some structure, and you had that structure, you had a folder. This is it. You treated it like you treat things, at work. But with the other one, you couldn't have any of
All
that.
external.
Yeah, there was no structure.
Yeah.
So, you had to let that go. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
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 So that's a really good. Yeah, they're both both of those situations have external influences, and then also your internal
Ability.
insight,
Yeah.
yes, on how you handle it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I know that that was kind of a little bit off the mark, but it, it does kind of show that look, I'm gonna stuff hits the fan. I was gonna go there, but I didn't. Stuff hits the fan. But you can clean it up. Like,
Sorry,
yeah, you
just
can
thought
clean
that's
it.
not a very nice job.
No, or delegate. But
Yes.
I think it's really important that we do acknowledge that, yeah, we can't control everything. We can all have these incredible, wonderful plans. There's always going to be something that comes up, and we need to be ready to take that on board, but allow ourselves the time to take that on board and adjust, adapt, etc.
Mhm,
Things,
mhm,
look, cliche incoming, things happen for a reason. And when they do, run with it. Run with it. Otherwise, we're all going to be very miserable for a lot
mm,
of the time.
mhm. I'm
Yeah.
also, place yourself at the center and go, okay, what's influencing me here? Like, what am I feeling? Why do I feel like this? What external factors are there? What internal feelings and factors or influences are there? Are my thoughts, relevant, or am I believing something that isn't actually happening? So I suppose, that RID model, I'm hoping helps us to go, okay, let's take stock of this situation. And and it's not just for New Year, it's for any point in time. But obviously, it came up for me, at the New Year, and it was the first time I felt like that. So I'm glad I shared, actually.
Thank you for sharing. I have no doubt that it's helped a lot of people and made a lot of people feel a little bit better about themselves too, for not feeling party central January.
Yeah, and overly positive. It's okay. That's really all I wanted to share. So am I right to summarize? Yeah.
Yeah, I think let's move.
Yeah. So with the RID model, so that's responsibility and influence dynamics. There's you at the center of personal responsibility. Then you have those external influences on your decision making as that person that's responsible. So those external influences can be your socioeconomic status, cultural norms, environmental factors as well, and relationships. So they were external, yes. Internal is the other one. Yeah, so we've got personal responsibility, external, and then internal. So they're things like mindset, self efficacy, so that faith in your ability, more so, your mindset, your values and beliefs that may be deep seated, and your current emotional state. So as Kelly and I have sort of gone through and talked about this this personal responsibility, it could be your personality, is at the heart of changing our circumstances. It's up to us. So I suppose why I wanted to share this is that sort of by recognizing sort of how our personal choices interrelate or are influenced by these internal and external factors, we can understand what our role is in shaping sort of our outcomes and experiences. So that model, use it as a framework, as a memory jogger, whatever. I'm sure I'll be coming back to it, because to me, it sort of, as I was mulling over it, thinking, oh, that's what that looks like. It's me. It's up to me, but I've got these things that are making me feel bad. But, well, get over it, Jackie. It's like, I can I can let it make me feel bad, or I can go, you know what, do something about it. Okay, take control. So it is that framework that helps you to identify what is influencing me at this point. How can I adapt or change those influences or use them to my benefit to get me out of this funk? Okay, so before I hand it back to you, Kelly, I always this is my favorite word, stay curious and always lead the standard. By staying curious and leading the standard, you'll continually find new opportunities for growth and excellence in your career.
Thank you, Jackie. We are going to wrap up today's episode of Lead the Standard. Fantastic episode at that. I do hope that everybody else found this discussion quite valuable and thought-provoking as I did. We have talked about breaking free from the hamster wheel and provided a framework for some real change. Thank you, Jackie, for sharing your story and your insights and being honest with you. A few key takeaways I had myself today. Again, similar to what you just said, we can't always control those external things. So identify what you can control. Identify what you can or can't change. If you can't change something, then don't make it your job, responsibility, or pressure yourself to be the person or the thing that makes that change. So focus on what you can control and what you can change, and focus on how that makes you feel. And really be honest with yourself and allow yourself time to process that. But also, again, acknowledge that those things might not always be the big scary dragons that you think they are. They might just be the tiny little gecko that's annoying you when you're trying to sleep during the middle. Before we go, next week we are talking about the secret to building real confidence. It's a cycle, not a gift, which I think is probably a really good follow on from this week, while we're all talking about feeling a little bit less confident than we have before. So trust me, you do not want to miss us next week. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, share the episode with your network, leave us a review. We do love hearing from you all and your feedback. So until next time, take care and bye for now.
Bye.